FX is the Bear teaches us that for those that aim to serve, they can only create momentary peace for their customers at the cost of their own, living in a never-ending cycle of stress, chaos, and conflict. While running a restaurant may sound like a humble dream, due to the volatility of the business, it's also incredibly ambitious, and the weight of that ambition wears on its owners in a way few could understand. It's not just about the taste, but the timing, the ambience, and the appearance, showing us just how much fire it takes to create a single drop of perfection. There's a plethora of strong performances in this series, but Jeremy Allen White is simply impossible to overlook. White was acting since he was a teenager, occasionally popping up in shows like Law & Order before landing his first major role as Lip Gallagher in Shameless, a role he would unexpectedly embody for 11 seasons. When long-running shows end, it's often hard for the actors to fully move on, as no matter how much they try, audiences will still see them as the character they presented. And on paper, his role in The Bear sounded somewhat similar to his role in Shameless, so you'd be forgiven for assuming he was just simply playing it safe. But it was now, at the age of 31, that he would deliver his strongest performance to date as the tortured culinary artist, a performance that would earn him 2 Golden Globes and his first Emmy. But what is it about this portrayal that makes it a cut above the rest? Let's take a deeper look at how Jeremy Allen White embodies Carmy Berzatto over the first 2 seasons of The Bear. The first key is the physicality of the character. A TV show's tone only works if the star is working in tandem with it, and White ensures that the audience never get to feel a moment of comfort amidst the chaos by seeming in a perpetual state of reactivity. He's always moving. It's as if Carmy is never allowed to be at peace internally or externally, as he's being pulled in 1,000 different directions at once. His feelings always come second to his responsibilities, but those responsibilities are tied directly into his feelings, as he's also in a state of grief. So to showcase the unpleasant emotions that are always bubbling beneath the surface, White makes Carmy frantically fidgety and twitchy. He always has to be physically touching something in order to self-soothe, a pattern he visibly picked up from observing all the chaos in his childhood home. If he's not rubbing his hair back out of pure stress, then he's either touching his face, or his mouth, or his chin. These agitated gestures express the constant discomfort that he's battling through, but also serve to keep everything in motion, so his head won't just nod once, it will rattle consistently in distressed agreement. If White had played a more placid and stoic chef, then the chaotic camera work would seem completely out of place. Whereas this way, not only are we moving with the character, but even when we're staying still, he's displaying these little ruptures of anxiety coursing through his entire body, which really helps to cement the tone of the show. His love-hate relationship with the job is also physically captured by how miserable he looks, almost every step of the way. Anyone can do something they enjoy when it's fun and easy, but Carmy almost never smiles and always has his head down. All of his energy is pulled south to the floor, as if he's trying to anticipate the worst rather than hope for the best. This job may not bring him joy, but it gives him purpose, communicating that it's not about pleasure, it's about vocation, precision, and excellence. None of these details are an accident. White does everything with intention. For example, if we look at the scene at the end of season 1, when he opens the final letter his brother left him, just observe how Jeremy embodies emotional torment from start to finish, using his body as an instrument to help us feel what it's like to be on the inside, even though he isn't saying anything, not a single word. It begins with a stressed rubbing of the hair, but it's not enough to just slick it back. He starts scratching, highlighting how uncomfortable he is in his own skin. He then moves on to looking at the letter, but notice the tight breaths pressing through his lungs that are also subtly making the out-of-focus letter tremble in the foreground. This makes everything feel emotionally alive in the frame. He then reads the note, and now we see White incorporate the character traits he's built all season of touching his face as a coping mechanism to create an even stronger visual tool for letting the emotion out. By placing his hand over his mouth, it conveys that his character is trying to hold the feeling in, which makes the emotion feel even more raw and honest. And then rather than just letting us see his eyes water, instead we see him fight the feeling back, and his hand rattles as the feeling works its way up, overpowers him, and wins this battle. And then afterwards he self-soothes with a gentle rubbing of his hair. All of this feels not just authentic to the character, but relatable, as every viewer has, at some point, tried to contain their emotions at a time of great distress. And by subtly giving us a visual tool to amplify the emotion, he compounds our connection to the character. The second key is eye contact. Most actors play off one another by looking each other in the eye, but in order for the character to feel more isolated and alone, they need to visibly connect with fewer people, and the clearest way to do that is by exhibiting less eye contact. So White usually has Carmen grinding away with his head down, not looking at who he's talking to, which creates a disconnect between himself and everyone around him. When he does look up or at who he's talking to, it's usually just for a flash second. It's mere lip service to the idea of eye contact while not actually giving any. So while we can see that other characters are more open and willing to connect, Carmen's mind is too scattered to devote his full attention to them. However, when Carmen does want to properly connect with another character, he intentionally goes out of his way to make clear, defined eye contact. He does this throughout the first 2 seasons at the moments that really matter, like when he promises Cicero that he will get him his money, or when he hires Sydney, or when he asks Mike to open a restaurant with him, or when he's offered a place to stay to get away from the family chaos, or when he meets Claire, or whenever he needs to give a sincere apology.
I'm so sorry, Chef. Happy you're back.
By using eye contact sparingly like this, it makes the audience and the characters value it more. It's as if he finally pulls himself out of his own head and is willing to not only see but humanize the person in front of him. And the final key is giving the character a personalized trauma response. Self-soothing is one thing, but Jeremy layers his character by letting us see his coping mechanisms in real time. So whenever we see Carmen in severe pain or distress, he shuts his eyes to hide within himself. It's here that he can find peace and safety away from the tornado of chaos around him. But it runs deeper than just hiding. When he's resisting shutting his eyes and closing himself off from the world, but his emotions are still flooding through, as a compromise, his eyelids blink more frequently, almost like he's processing the psychological wound in real time. Or he'll give himself just one hard, comforting blink to reset from a moment of internal agony. There are clear examples of this throughout both monologues at his Addicts Anonymous meetings, in which Carmen is resisting his usual instinct to suppress, hide, or run away, and is instead facing his feelings, but they battle him every step of the way, creating a constant flickering.
I started to find this station for myself.
White's delivery of these monologues is nothing short of outstanding. We see him disassociating and re-engaging in such an intimate way that I genuinely can't say I've seen on screen before. And it's actually the moments between speaking that talk the loudest, as we get to witness his laboured emotional processing, his eyes scanning back and forth almost like he's reading between the lines of his own soul.
I didn't get into college, I didn't have any girlfriends, I don't think I'm funny.
It's these uncensored moments that give us the greatest insight and connection to the character. Almost any actor can play strong and stoic or a crumbling mess, but it's those in-betweeny places that a great character is truly defined. How much or how little they can let go and how often or how hard they need to pull back in order to feel safe tells us so much about them. We see all these physical coping mechanisms come together at the end of Season 2, after being locked in the fridge and losing Claire. Yet again, like earlier with the letter, Jeremy starts stirring the viewer's emotions by trembling his hand as he listens to the voice message, so we know we're not on steady ground. Hearing the words "I love you" causes him to toss the phone to the floor and he completely breaks. So true to form, his eyes shut to hide from the pain. but it's too overwhelming, so he needs to block his eyes with his palms to fully retreat into himself. We then hear his deep, strained breaths squeezing through his lungs to highlight how physically tense he is. So White isn't just giving us a visual performance, he's making it audible. And notice how along the way he still delivers these trademark sharp blinks to signify his character's internal agony. He then puts his hand over his mouth to draw attention back to his eyes, where his pupils start searching internally for answers, scanning back and forth like a lost child. This performance feels so complete because White clearly understands his character inside and out. Over the years, there have been and still are many movies and television series set in kitchens, to the point we're all almost overly familiar with the archetype of the shouty chef chasing perfection. But by finding so many subtle physical techniques to communicate Carmen's underlying emotional state, Jeremy Allen White has managed to bring something genuinely fresh to the table, that has far more depth and flavour than anything we've seen in this genre before. Well, if you've made it this far, firstly, thank you for watching, but if you could now give the video a like, possibly even leave a comment and click on that subscribe button, it will encourage that mysterious algorithm to do its thing.